in just 6 months, the production dropping by 500,000 barrels a day is a bit questionable, but it might be a long-term trend that has not been announced for over some years. This has happened gradually, but now suddenly they have announced it. But this is very important because at current levels of domestic consumption, if this trend, lack of investment and so on, continues, Iran will not be an exporter of oil in 8 to 10 years, according to the Iranian Parliament Research Center. And another indicator is that this government is very efficient in repressing protests and arresting journalists and intellectuals. They are experts and they know their job pretty well. But in running the country and implementing even their own laws and policies, this is a quite weak state. Two recent examples of these past 1 or 2 years is this value-added tax policy that has been in the making for so many years, and it was passed by the parliament and government, promised in the budget laws of 2007 and then 8 that it will implement it. It tried to implement it, and it just lasted for 2 weeks because goldsmiths and jewelries went on strike and closed down their stores in main cities, the bazaars of main cities, and it was stopped. It was suspended. The other thing is this new policy of eliminating subsidies and making cash payments to clusters of deciles, of income deciles. So they have clustered these 10 income deciles into 3 large clusters. The lowest 3, and then from decile 4 to 7, and then the top 3 deciles are those who are not the top cluster, as they call it. Those will not receive cash payments in lieu of the subsidies that has been paid for fuel and other basic food, basic items. But this has been in the news, and the Statistical Center of Iran has collected data, and people have filled in questionnaires and so on for 2 years. But now, when it came to implementing, just because people made their disagreement with this way of clustering a lot, there was a lot of phone calls to the Statistical Center and so on, they backtracked again. They revoked the policy again. So they said, oh, this is suspended, and Ahmadinejad's interview, this last interview before the anniversary of the revolution, was that, oh, this is no big deal, we just revoke it. So, as you see, this is a government very efficient in clubbing people, in putting people behind bars, and accusing everyone of being connected to Zionism, and all that, but very inefficient in implementing its own policies, its own laws. This has resulted, of course, this crisis of legitimacy has resulted in protest waves, and this has been recurrent. The first major waves of protest were the urban riots of the early 1990s. Those were large cities bursting in just suddenly overnight, and the cities of Mashhad, of Arak, of Qazvin, of the Islam Shah on the southern flank of Tehran. And the important point about all these urban riots was that they could not suppress it with the forces within those cities. So they had to, extra security forces had to be, in large numbers, had to be brought in from other cities to quell the disturbances. And I think that is a very important turning point in the way that this political system has thought about the question of security. And the point was then that if our own security forces in those large cities cannot stop the protest, and at times they were participating in those protests. The Revolutionary Guards, people of the revolutionary committees then were participating in those protests. What is the social base that this regime can rely on at times of crisis? Apart from these movements, there's apart from these riots, there's the other movements. The student movement and the student uprisings has been a recurrent phenomenon in Iran for all the late 1990s till now. And there are, of course, other sub-movements, as we call them, women's movement, workers' union movement, which is growing, and teachers' organizations, and so on. And only I have like 3-4 minutes. So now the question is how the regime addresses this question of the social base, of creating or relying on a organized social base that can come to support it in times of crisis. I have used this idea of Guillermo O'Donnell about the bureaucratic authoritarian state. The current state is not a BA state in the sense that O'Donnell used in the 1970s. But there's one important point, that the coup d'etats in the 70s in Latin America, in Argentina, Chile, and Brazil in the 1960s for Brazil, those were means, strategies for recomposing the ruling elites. Those were ways of eliminating part of the ruling elites of Latin America in late 60s and 70s. And I think what is happening now in Iran is the same thing. It's an effort to recompose the ruling classes, the ruling elites of the Islamic Republic. And the major mechanism is privatization. This drive, so-called privatization, to create a new ruling class and a new system of patronage, of a vertical system of creating resource distribution and buying loyalty. But what is happening is that the sources of power in the military and security establishment and those around the office of the leader, as it is called, they are trying to capture, conquer the commanding heights of the economy. And what is happening is what they call, what they have referred to as a Chinese-style privatization, which is a two-stage privatization. In the first stage,